Hello and welcome to Macro Mondays here on Landy's Crypto Corner, powered by the Goxstein News Network. Today is June 23rd, 2025, and we hit our downside target. And that was one of the first ones at the big zone of interest if we did see Bitcoin lose the 101 level or right there about. We got the swing of the lows over here. We did see a close back inside, and we did get a strike at the $98,000 or just above $98,000. That zone of interest right around $98,000 to $95,000 bracketing this point of control of the range down here, which was this prior big consolidation over here. But we're pretty zoomed in so that we can see the other side of this in lower term timeframes. We did regain on the Monday candle here. Tuesday session is open, of course, now, but the Monday candle, we regained the 101 level or just above 101. In the lower term time frames, tested in around the 1272 up here by 104, and then proceeded to start closing lower term time frame candles above and spike right into our 106 level there. So Bitcoin back above 104 is good for the bulls, but they need to hold it. So that's really the criteria. We do have a downtrending structure here. So we have lower highs. We have a nice swing higher low as it relates to this last lower low, because we had a downtrend from the all-time high, then a trend break. We got the higher low structure here, but a big old rejection that formed a lower high. Now we have lower lows. So we do have a downtrend. And as it stands right now, closing above the Sunday candle swing high at 103,417 here, did close this as a low structure. So what do we need to look for here? Well, any lower term time frame price action above 106, I would look for it to try up for the close open lower high here at around that 106,850 level. But realistically, to break the downtrend from here after setting this lower low, bulls need to actually start closing back above 109. And if price does start to push up there, I would expect the little bit extra to be on the table there, up to around $110,000. So, and of course, that would start to put price in the vicinity of this high, but it would be fair game if we did see price start pushing into the green zone here, which is essentially this 106 to the 109,360, which was the all-time high over here, where we got the double tops on a close, is defining the bottom side of the range here that price just ran into. So nothing too crazy going on here. We hit our downside targets and then very quickly saw Bitcoin regain its footing and then come right back into the high side of the range here, but we still have a downtrending structure. So we do need to see a trend break and then a trend reversal set up. So that is kind of what I'm going to be looking out for as a possibility, seeing as we do have a lower low close and swing now for this current downtrend. And let's see where we are on the bands. Yeah, so we didn't actually hit any expansion in earnest here. In fact, this is a cool down phase and a revert back to the mean. We have the basis band right here. I believe there's the 50 simple moving average right around this basis band as well for the daily. Basis band, of course, is the 20 simple. But the bulls showed that they can push back up. Now they need to see continuation to start moving back into the green zone, 106 to the 109,360, and I would even put 110 on the board there. Back above 110, obviously, and this lower high up here, which was the trend-breaking higher high off of the downtrend over here, well, then I would be looking for the all-time high and higher. And, of course, we do have the upper second standard deviation right around 110 right now. That does imply that closes above 110 will kick off expansion, but we need to see the additional criteria of closing above the 110,650 and then, of course, the 112 region to actually kick off expansion or true expansion of the Bollinger Band set here from a volatility perspective, and not just reject or bounce between the upper second and, of course, after a lower second bounce. But again, Bitcoin needs to close above the basis band here. I would want to see that, and of course regain 106. That's the big one to at least start to test up. You can see the upper first is right here around 108, and that is going to be a key level, right? We did see a bearish candle before the big dump off here. We did see a bearish candle that locked in this lower high swing and close structure here right there, and that was on bearish divergence, and that's regular bearish divergence in this case. And I would just keep a lookout on that area if we do start seeing closes, even in lower term timeframes, back above 106. So look to 108, then you can kind of look to the 110 region and possibly a close above this 109 swing high. In that case, a swing lower high. That does also mean, even though we had a really nice Monday session, that, well, it's still a downtrend. So we do need to be aware that we only hit the top side of the first targets I've been looking for, somewhere around the high here, 98 to the top side of the candles, just below the point of control here at 96. So essentially 95 to $98,000, anywhere below there. And I would look right back to the weekly higher low close right here at the actual 93.5, 93K. Where we did get, some swings around this area after Bitcoin reclaimed the prior lows of the range. And that's between the 92 and right around $88,700, $89,000 if you're taking the weekly swing low. And that is the last swing higher low. That does mean that we need to check on a few other things here. And that would be RSI first. Now, as it relates to this low, coming right at the end of the, or right at the edge, I should say, of the bearish control zone, this does get some long-term hidden bullish divergence. Doesn't really mean too much. We've kind of seen the initial move off of something like that. Of course, it's not going to populate on most indicators because it's so far back in terms of look back or time frame. And in this case, I wouldn't make too much out of this just yet. It still has the opportunity, and that opportunity is presenting itself with a shift in momentum. We do need to see Bitcoin close above the momentum pivot here. We also did get a bit of a momentum divergence here. So we do have a regular bullish divergence on momentum that is currently populated, but not yet solidified. We need to see at least another close over the pivot, and that's going to be at 102,650 right now. So 102,650 would be Bitcoin falling back into the 104 to 101 region. So if we do start to see Bitcoin breach back below around 104 in the mid 103 region by the 1272, look right to that lower first around 103. If we start to see that fail, we're likely going to see that momentum cross not get hit, as price is likely going to play down to the lower half of this support zone, more towards that 101 region again, and maybe even swinging back down to the lower second. If it closes anywhere below there, well, then we're looking for expansion to the downside. Run that 98 again, then we're starting to look back to the pivot or the point of control rather, which is just the highest volume traded price at around $96,000. And then at the top side of the candle structures over here at 95, and then anywhere below there to the 93.5, 93K zone around that last weekly higher low. Let's go ahead and check up on the weekly, and we'll get rid of the local support and resistance zones of interest here. And here's what bulls can start to look for. We have a complex closing high. Yes, the swing structure is a swing downtrend as it stands right now. So higher high, higher low, lower high, lower low. But in terms of a closing structure, this is a singular closing high. And most indicators will also tell you this as well, depending on how they're configured. This does mean that now that we have the higher high, which is a complex high locked in on the weekly, this is now our first downtrend break higher high. So we had the downtrend over here. This would be your closing downtrend break higher high. And from a statistics point of view, it's more likely that we'll see a higher low or equal low structure from here on the weekly. That could happen locally right here, right now. That could happen further down towards, 85 or even the low side of the range, 92 to 89, or even lower and start digging down into the sub 85 level. But that is the more statistically likely outcome from here, and that is the trend reversal setup. Now, if it happens locally here, the bulls actually have the advantage. So let's say that we see a higher low swing and closing structure up here. Well, it would be a lower low swing, but in terms of a closing structure, it would be a higher low. Sorry. Because we have the high painted now, where would we see a low on a closed set? Well, that would be back above last week's high at 109. And then we would have higher high closes with this candle that's in as of the end of last week into the start of this week. Close back above that, we go from a higher high to a higher low set on a closing basis, and that would start to target, well, right back to the highs at minimum, somewhere around the 110 to 112 region. Of course, the close open up here is 109, by the way, where we got the rejection in last week's candle. And realistically, anywhere above the 110 to 112 region, I'm looking 112 to 115, somewhere by the upper second standard deviation. And bulls would like to see at minimum a close above the upper first in terms of volatility. So basically here or higher, above 105 essentially. And that would give the bias towards, if 105 held, that we'd be playing within the volatility zone of interest, not support and resist, but volatility zone of interest between the upper first and upper second. Anywhere above the upper second at 115, it's basically 120, and then, you know, kind of sky's the limit up to the next big level that I've talked about quite a bit. It's by 1414 extension on a Fibonacci retracement from both the local structure, which, you know, there is a bit of a checkpoint. We could see swings above the upper second to like 116. But realistically, it's like 120 to 122. And then we're looking to the 1414 at $128,000. This is from the downtrending structure here after making the first big push up and then correction to this zone after the breakout from last year's high side structure at 73,835. Now, of course, this is confluent with the macro structure from the prior cycle high to the bear market low at that 1414. So we do have confluence around that $128,000 level. And again, Bitcoin currently trying to push above the 1272, which is just under 104, which is a big daily level, but it is a confluent macro level up here because we got closes on it, we deviated above it, now trying to regain it. And then the 1414 from a macro point of view is going to be the $128,000, and I would give it room, like 128 to 130. It could even swing further above there if it starts to really push on the weekly, especially. But that is what the bulls would want to see on the weekly time frame, at least for this local structure, right? But, you know, bears on the other side, they want to eat too. And what do they want to see? They want to see right around, you know, $95,000 break. And that would put Bitcoin in the bearish half of the Bollinger Band set here, and more biased to test the bottom side of the range over here. You know, whether it's the weekly higher low at 93.5 to, you know, the low down here at 89. You know, that's kind of the big range here. And then if that were to fall apart, we look to the lower first, which is confluent with a big daily level at $85,000, right? So, and there's also a weekly lower high close slightly above there at 86. If that begins to happen, you know, I'll be on it with with an update video, obviously on Wednesday. But, you know, bulls showing some spiciness up here to regain after hitting a key area that we've talked about quite a lot, and that's 98 to 95. Yeah, it was a little bit front run, but it's, you know, roughly around 98 to 95. We don't always get the fun ones that hit our targets exactly, like when I was looking for 110 to 112 and we got the 112 exactly. That happens very rarely. Like the last time that it really happened, like exactly to the dot, I think was like the 38.5 after the ETF launch at 49K, which, you know, I was looking around 48 to 50. We hit 49 and then dumped out to like 38.5. But, you know, it's if you stay, you know, tuned into the markets and just, you know, keep a level head when things are going down and going up and understand the context, you can do just fine. And it provides for some nice lower term time frame volatility. When looking at the weekly and then going down to the dailies, there's been some really nice volatility after we got the trend breaking higher high and then failed to put in any kind of it didn't fail. It actually put in the higher low here on a close, but immediately turned around in that Tuesday candle. So Monday pump, Tuesday dump, and then set a lower high. And I would just, be cognizant of the important areas of interest. We want to see 104 hold. Otherwise, Bitcoin's kind of playing between that 101 to 104 level again. Anywhere below 101, we're looking at the current lows. The current low, I should say, it's fair game, 98 to the 95 region, and then, down on from there. But above, 106, then we're starting to look back to, we have the close open at 106, 850, and then it's really kind of 106 to 108 by the upper first before looking 110 to 112 again. Pretty straightforward stuff, not that ambiguous. Let's go ahead and actually take a look at the weekly, because I know that we have, and I've seen some people kind of make a big deal about this, and it's like, well, there's bearish divergence on the weekly here. Yes, there is, but this bearish divergence is not as important as if it was in trend. This is coming off of a trend break, so any kind of bearish divergence that you see on indicators for RSI or momentum are more corrective at first, and then we evaluate, like I said, statistically looking for a higher, lower, equal low structure from here, whether it's local or further down, doesn't really matter. That's the more likely outcome, and then that's the trend reversal setup. Once the trend reversal setup is in, then we start to evaluate trend reversal confirmation, which can only come on closes back above 112 now. And that's something to pay attention to. And that's what I'm going to leave you with today. I hope you all had a wonderful weekend. I know that there's a lot of geopolitical stuff going on, and that situation has been changing kind of moment to moment. Let's hope for some sort of a resolution. That is what seems to be happening now. And and then we can get back to only really worrying about the things that are important in our own nations for a bit here, and taking a look at markets and evaluating markets. So have a wonderful morning, afternoon, and evening, no matter where you are in the world. Please trade safe, and of course, as always, stay safe. With all of that being said, Landy out. Take care.